This is the worst aviation disaster ever involving a single plane. It's a story of human error, lives cut tragically short, and an industry forever changed. This is the story of Japan Airlines Flight 123. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive right in. It's August 12, 1985. Japan Airlines Flight 123, a Boeing 747 Senior, is departing Haneda Airport in Tokyo. Its destination is Osaka International Airport, just a hop, skip, and a jump away. There are 509 passengers and 15 crew members on board. Many are returning home after the Obon holiday, enjoying the comforts of one of the world's best airlines. They should arrive in Osaka in about 1 hour and 20 minutes, but they never do. For now, let's get our timeline going. At 5:26 p.m. local time, Flight 123 departed the gate. At 5:46 p.m., the plane took off and climbed into the skies of Tokyo. And at 6:12 p.m., the plane reached 24,000 feet. That's when everything went wrong. There was a sudden loud noise followed by a decompression. The 747 was ripping apart in the sky. At 6:14 p.m., the pilots declared an emergency. And at 6:15 p.m., the first officer radioed a mayday. The pilots had lost control of the plane. At 6:16 p.m., the 747 began its descent. At 6:17 p.m., contact was lost with Flight 123. Let's go back to that fateful moment when the plane ripped apart in the sky. As the jumbo jet climbed into the sky, seemingly unaware of its fate, it was under the control of a veteran pilot, Captain Tatsuyama Shida. He was highly regarded, having logged thousands of hours in the cockpit. He was well-trained and experienced, but even he would not be able to save his plane. As it cruised at 24,000 feet, a noise like thunder erupted inside the fuselage. Oxygen masks fell from their compartments, and passengers screamed as the cabin depressurized. What happened next would defy explanation. The rear bulkhead of the plane, which separated the pressurized cabin from the unpressurized tail, had ruptured. The immense pressure differential tore the vertical stabilizer clean off the plane, severing all the hydraulic lines connected to it. Within seconds, the plane was crippled. Here's a close look at what happened. When the bulkhead burst, a blast of air tore through the plane, snatching the vertical stabilizer and its attached hydraulic lines from the plane. These lines were the lifeline of the aircraft's control system. Without them, the plane could not be steered. The pilots struggled to make sense of what was happening. The captain shouted, "What the hell is going on here?" The first officer was equally stunned. "Rapid decompression," he said, realizing the gravity of their situation. With the hydraulic system gone, they had to land a 747 without the ability to control it. They tried using the alternate hydraulic pumps, but they couldn't compensate for the loss. They put out a distress call. "Mayday, mayday," cried the first officer. "We have an unknown problem. We're trying to recover, but we don't know if we can." The controllers were just as shocked by what they heard. "What is your altitude?" they asked, trying to buy time. 3,000, came the reply. "I'm trying to maintain 3,000. The pilots knew they had to get the plane back to Haneda. They couldn't risk losing more lives. The captain wrestled with the controls, trying to use engine thrust to steer the plane. It wasn't ideal, but it was their only option. Outside the cockpit, chaos reigned. Inside the cabin, people screamed as the plane bucked and swayed. They had no idea what was going on. Some had lost their oxygen masks, others clutched their seats, praying for a miracle. In the midst of the panic, some found a moment of calm. They pulled out pieces of paper and wrote farewell notes to their loved ones. Parents wrote to their children, lovers to their sweethearts, and friends to their best pals. Some spoke of their pride, others of their regrets. One passenger wrote, "To my wife and children, I love you. I want to see you again." A sob escaped her lips. As the plane continued to lose altitude, the controller noticed something troubling. Flight 123 was drifting dangerously off course. It was heading straight for the mountains of Osutaka. "Turn to the right," the controller shouted, hoping to divert the plane from its path. But the pilot couldn't comply. He was doing his best, but he didn't have full control. The plane veered sharply, then banked to the left. It was out of control. When they realized that there was no way to divert the plane or stabilize it, the pilots prepared for an emergency landing. But it was too little, too late. At 6:56 p.m., Flight 123 slammed into Mount Osutaka. The impact killed everyone on board except for of the 520 people on board, only 4 survived. What caused the crash? Why did the plane suddenly fall out of the sky? Here's where things get interesting. After the crash, investigators set out to determine what caused such a devastating disaster. Their focus was on the bulkhead that had ruptured, sending the plane into a tailspin. Now, before we go any further, here's something important to note. Back in 1978, the same plane had been in an accident. It had a tail strike on landing, causing damage to the bulkhead. The damage was repaired according to the manufacturer's specifications, or so they thought. Now fast forward to 1985, when the fatal crash occurred. After careful analysis of the bulkhead, investigators found that it had been compromised. How? Well, let me show you. You see, in 1978, Boeing recommended a single continuous splice plate to repair the bulkhead, but instead, two smaller plates were used, leaving a gap between them. The problem was that over the years, this joint had weakened, leading to cracks that eventually caused the rupture. In essence, a small repair job turned into a catastrophic failure. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a wall in your house with a small hole in it. You patch the hole with a bandage, but over time, the bandage comes loose and the hole gets bigger. Eventually, the wall collapses. That's what happened to the bulkhead. In fact, investigators found that the strength of the joint was only 70% of what it was supposed to be. It was doomed to fail. So there you have it. The plane had been compromised by a faulty repair, leading to its premature demise. That's why there are several takeaways from this horrific accident. First, we need to talk about maintenance. It's one of the most crucial aspects of aviation. Even a minor lapse in judgment can have disastrous consequences. In the case of Flight 123, the repair work was done according to the manufacturer's specifications, but the materials used were subpar. This led to a cascade of events that ended in tragedy. Second, communication is key. If the mechanics had communicated their concerns about the repair job to the right people, perhaps things could have turned out differently. But in this case, nobody seemed to be aware of the extent of the damage. Third, oversight plays a crucial role. Regulatory bodies must ensure that maintenance work is done properly and that planes are safe to fly. In this case, the oversight was lacking and lives were lost. And fourth, technology is not foolproof. Even the most advanced technology can fail if it's not maintained properly. The 747 is a marvel of modern engineering, but it was brought down by a small, seemingly insignificant repair. After the crash, the airline and Boeing made significant changes to prevent another disaster like this from happening. Japan Airlines overhauled its maintenance protocols, and Boeing issued new guidelines for repairing bulkheads. Regulators also stepped up inspections and oversight to ensure that planes were safe to fly. But perhaps the most important lesson is to remember that even small mistakes can have big consequences. A single lapse in judgment, a single faulty component can bring down even the mightiest of machines. Do you know what your favorite thing about flying is? For me, it's the feeling of takeoff. There's just something so exhilarating about leaving the ground behind and soaring into the sky. But I can't help but wonder, if you could choose any type of flight, what would it be? Would you prefer the smooth glide of a seaplane, the high-speed zoom of a fighter jet, or maybe even the weightlessness of a zero-gravity flight? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe.